Good morning. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and review week 1 from last week, some highlights. We talked about constructions, which remember those are very precise drawings that are based on using a compass and straight edge. And even though they're precise, there are no measurements, making them somewhat like a variable in algebra, meaning it could be any length or any size angle or any size shape. We're not worried about the actual size. We're worried about using the constructions to find the exact middle of any segment or the exact center of any angle. So we talked about constructions and we used the compass tool quite a bit in GeoGebra, and we used the line, segment, and ray. We also talked about the perpendicular bisector, which is really a critical thing because, as we found out in week 2, it's useful because when we bisect a segment, any point on that segment is any point on that bisector is equidistant from the endpoints of the segment. So we talked about having a lot of little triangles that would be congruent, right? This little triangle would be congruent to that little triangle. And those are just conjectures right now because we haven't proved them, but we know that that's the nature of the construction. We bisect the original segment, we get two 90-degree angles, and then because we've cut the segment in half, any place on that perpendicular bisector, we're going to get two segments that are the same distance from the endpoints of the segment. Okay. So that's a huge idea, big idea. We also talked about circles, and circles are all points equidistant, the same distance, equidistant from one point. So that's what the compass tool does in GeoGebra. I take one point and I take a radius length, and all the points that radius length away, they're all going to be the same. And so all the points that same distance from the one point, that's what makes a circle, right? Yes, they're round. Yes, they have 360 degrees. Yes, they don't have any sides. But the key thing, the main idea that we keep thinking about is this distance idea. So all the points equidistant from one point. That's what makes a circle. So mostly last week, we worried about constructions and we learned about using the compass tool in GeoGebra. We spent some time with the perpendicular bisector, which gives us equidistant from the endpoints of the segment. We talked about circles, which are all the points equidistant from one point. And then we used the compass tool and the straight edge and that idea of the perpendicular bisector to construct perpendicular to a line through a point on the line, off the line, and we use that idea to bisect an angle, right? When we had an angle, we basically set up a segment, and then when we bisected that segment, that was our angle bisector. We could use that idea of the perpendicular bisector and overlapping circles to make regular shapes like equilateral triangles and regular hexagons. So all sides congruent, all angles congruent. Those were some of the big ideas. So remember, you can also go to geogebra.org and look at the resources and some of the people that you want to look for. Tim Brzezinski, Steve Phelps, GeoGebra resource team. If you go to geogebra.org and check the resources, you can search for whatever it is you're looking for, how to construct whatever you need to do. How to construct whatever you're looking for, or construction of. And then the last little thing that we're definitely coming back to, but not yet, we talked about transformations. And there were 3: translation, which is a slide, and we use that idea to translate an angle up using circles and making a construction to get parallel lines. So we use that idea of translation to make parallel lines, and I posted directions for how to do that in Google Classroom. And we talked about rotations, and we'll come back to those. And we talked about reflections, and we'll come back to those. So spins and mirrors, right? So we'll talk about those. So we got translation, rotation, reflection. Remember, if you are doing work in GeoGebra or your book right now until we get the app going, screenshot homework and cool downs and post in Google Classroom so that I can see it. Because I can't just see your GeoGebra, and for the moment, I can't see what you're doing in the book. I should be able to once we get apps pushed out and we can get the app going on your iPad. Then I should be able to see things. Things should work smoother, but for the moment, anything that you're doing, screenshot it and post in Google Classroom. Thanks, and have a good week. Look for another one of these for week 2. Thank you.